If you are looking to move forward in your life towards your authentic dreams without sacrificing your emotional health, your nervous system, your relationships, or your spiritual health, well, you are in good company. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is a safe space for creatives. This is the Heal Create podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. I am so excited to have a friend and colleague and beautiful woman on this podcast. We're going to talk about femininity today. And in this conversation, we're going to be diving into what it means to embody a healthy, integrated expression of femininity, particularly as a Christian woman / Christian creative, maybe in the process of reconstructing your faith, navigating modern culture and your upbringing, the beliefs that you inherited around it, and the wisdom of our own bodies. Today, I am so excited to introduce you guys to Rebekah.
Hi.
I actually paused because I'm like, I do know your last name, but all of a sudden I got afraid that I was going to say it wrong. Can you say your last name?
Yes, absolutely. LaRobardiere.
LaRobardiere. Yes, that's what I was going to say. Totally. So I wanted to bring you on because Rebekah is a sex and relationship coach, a somatic sex and relationship coach, correct? Mm-hmm. And I've worked with her. I know her personally. She's incredible in the shame-free way that she approaches sexuality and femininity. And I think it's a super, super important topic that we don't talk about enough. And what we have talked about leading up to this conversation and what I wanted to bring you on for was this idea that a lot of women that I work with are struggling with understanding what healthy femininity is. And they find themselves torn between the two extremes of this outdated and rigid, maybe this idea of biblical womanhood that equates virtue with silence or submission or self-denial or anti-desire or whatever. And then cultural femininity that either demands like super anything goes, hypersexualized freedom, or rejects femininity altogether in pursuit of empowerment and maybe more feminism. And so there is a middle ground, one that honors the body, values emotional and spiritual intelligence, and trusts in the sacred design of femininity as both powerful and receptive. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you found yourself in this profession?
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit, I'll do a nutshell.
Sure.
Because I could talk for days.
Same.
So I am a sex and relationship coach and a somatic experiencing practitioner. And I grew up very conservative and got married and realized I was lacking a lot of information and education and felt bamboozled or lied to around what it meant to be a woman, a sexual being, a wife. And so we got home from our honeymoon and I decided I'm going to figure this out for me and anyone that wanted to listen. And that was over 20 years ago. And so I jokingly say I've been doing this for over 20 years. And I just started out on a journey not to fight against something, but to fight for something, to fight for myself and for my future children and anyone that wanted to listen. And so this has been a journey and a process of me discovering what does it look like to be truly and authentically me, because we can't separate our sexuality from our humanity. And as a woman, I am feminine, but my femininity is going to look different than someone else's. And in my stance of being able to be an embodied feminine being is going to look very differently than someone else's. And it's not the super free, all things goes, because that doesn't honor me at the core of who I am. And neither does the rigidity of avoiding who I am.
Yeah.
And so it was, is, and will continue to be a tapping into at the core of who I am. How do I want to show up?
Yeah.
How do I get to show up as me? And it'll change depending on the phase of the month it is also, and that's part of our
Gosh.
femininity.
Yeah.
It's embracing every aspect and change of who we are, and it's not a prescription. It's not a if you follow this then you will be. It's I
Mm-hmm.
get to.
Yeah. Yes,
So does that
absolutely.
answer the question? I kind of went off on a tangent. Don't know if it was really far enough.
No, you did. Actually, well, you answered my first question. My first question, or at least you started to answer this first question, which was, what does embodied femininity mean to you? And how is it different from the cultural or religious messages we often receive about being a woman? And you mentioned understanding that it comes from inside of you. It comes from, which I think you're touching on self-trust
Yeah.
that gets taken for so many people that have had any kind of history of trauma or and so is there anything else you want to add to that as far as like what embodied femininity means to you?
So, as I was talking over with a few people about being on this podcast, I often get like, "Well, Rebekah, you're different."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yes, I'm different. Yet I'm not that different. I am an internal processor, so you see my end result of all of my
Sure.
thinking. So it
Yeah.
appears either spontaneous or um to some
Easy.
people easy,
Yeah.
flippant. It just well, you just decided and it did.
Let me pause for 1 second. I just put my hands up so she could
Okay.
tell. Let me just describe Rebekah for those that don't know her. She is a walking Pinterest board of feminine glory beauty, perfectly, beautifully dressed. I wouldn't say like perfectly in the unattainable way. I would say perfectly in the deeply inspiring way. Like beautifully feminine. Your fashion style is always just chef's kiss. The beautiful structured dresses and your hair and your makeup, and you're just like really own it. And
Can I
it's
pause you right there real quick?
yes.
That makes me chuckle because this morning I get into work and I'm Marco Poloing someone. I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot to put any makeup on. I have no eyebrows on, no mascara on, nothing.
That's so funny.
I was
Well,
like,
because
oh well.
it's funny because you would walk through your husband owns a famous to the city that we are from, the city that I used to live in, Reading, coffee shop. And I remember me and my friends, a couple of the girls that work there, we were just like, man, what would that be like to just wear whatever you want every day and to just own your beauty like that, like own your form, own your femininity the way that Rebekah does. So I have to say,
Aw.
when Rebekah's friends say, well, you're different, what they're saying is probably what a lot of us who see you think, which is that I wish it was easier for me to feel as comfortable with my own beauty and femininity as it is for
Mm,
Rebekah. And you're saying that this is the result of 20 years of work and 20 years of deep, deep understanding. By the
yeah.
way, my favorite thing when I was around you is hearing you tell people what you do.
It is pretty
Because
fun.
you just don't hear like, I'm a sex therapist. I'm a sex and relationship therapist very often. And like men especially be like, okay, oh, okay.
That's when talking coffee is really handy.
I
And
bet that it is.
my own theory, and this is what my husband does.
Totally. Oh my gosh, totally. Well, so many women have experienced their bodies as like battlegrounds
Mhm.
through shame
Yeah.
that comes from all kinds of outside sources, through trauma, learning to be performative, and that tension of having to and wanting to show up like you're like how you imagine yourself inside, but then feeling like an imposter. And a lot of that can come from purity culture
Mhm.
as well.
Yeah.
So what other things do you find? What are some of the common storylines that you hear in your work? And I want to get into your journey as a somatic experiencing practitioner as well. But what are some of the storylines that you hear when women are disconnected from their femininity, their beauty, their expression of their womanhood in them, in that part of them?
Yeah, that's a deep question because there are so many nuances and so many things that play into it, whether it's purity culture or just the society and cultural conditioning that we live in
Mm-hmm.
of beauty looks like this. Um, and with embodied femininity, it's we do almost look for a prescription. We want someone to tell me how to do this, and then I will belong. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what religion did and all these other things, which then also drove people away from it. Because if I can't adhere to this, then again, I don't belong. And we're all
Yeah.
looking for belonging. We want to be
Mm.
able to belong in ourselves and with others. And if we are trying to adhere to this list of things so that I can become worthy to belong, then we're
Mm-hmm.
always going to feel like an imposter because
Mm-hmm.
that's not our standard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I had the privilege to speak at a female entrepreneurial conference, and part of one of the things was about imposter syndrome. And we deal with imposter syndrome oftentimes, in my mind, here's my theory, is because the standard is set for men. It is a male centric standard. And so
Mm.
women have been white knuckling, um, avoiding femininity, tapping into their masculine, which is there,
Mm-hmm.
and we have it, yet discouraging our femininity to fit in to this standard that was never designed for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we're going to feel like an imposter because we've separated half of who we are to fit in. And so now we're going to be defensive. Now we don't get to show up as who we are. So, of course, we're an imposter. So, if we
Mm-hmm.
change the standard of what it looks like for me to show up in this world, and granted, I've been doing this my whole life. I can tell people,
Mm-hmm.
well, hey, just tell them Rebekah said you could at age 12 to an adult. And I was like, just tell them I said you could.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like who's going to listen to a 12-year-old? Hey,
Mm-hmm.
someone did. Right.
Yeah.
And it's owning that I got to set my standard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it a lot easier to walk in femininity in who I am when I have permission. And so a lot of what I do as a sex and relationship coach is to give permission because we were never given permission.
That's true.
It's you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I'm given problems, but rarely solutions. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm not allowed to make a mess. And so I am stuck in this very rigid thing. So it is safer for you to give me these task lists of things to do so that I don't make a mess,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because messes are bad. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually love messes. They create opportunities for connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
Totally.
leaning into that. And I think that is very feminine. Like we
Yes.
get to be messy, but not an intentional mess to create disconnect. But
Right.
it's like spring cleaning. You spring clean, you make a mess so that it airs out
Mm-hmm.
all these places and nooks and crannies that actually need time and attention.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I I hear what you're saying, and I feel like gosh, there's so many trailheads here. I want to talk about the science of safety because you're touching on like biological imperatives for safety, belonging,
Yeah.
and how so many of us abandon our expression of femininity at really early ages, especially those of us that live in super hyper religious cultures, because we were taught that there was danger in all of the places that embodied femininity could take us.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to step into danger. We wanted to belong to our family and friends. Our nervous system wanted to belong more than our authenticity wanted to express. Always.
Yeah.
So we have to teach and retrain our nervous system to allow that authenticity to express. As far as making messes, I know for me, this is not the time or the place for my whole story, but I will say, and you do know my personal story, that it was mess isn't even the disaster. It wasn't a disaster. It was my process, but it was so messy. And there were so many places that I like almost went to that I was like, what's happening to me? And I remember it's so funny / sad to think about it now, but just in expressing my femininity, which is such a value of mine, there, I genuinely didn't know. I was so sheltered. I genuinely didn't know, like, is every man going to fall in love with me? Am I going to like piss off every woman? Like, that is an incredibly naive, like, that comes from a little girl who was never taught how to like hold her own identity and femininity. But I felt so like, oh my gosh, like it had been embarrassing for me to think back to my 20s and 30s when I was really like, I genuinely didn't know. Am I going to like go crazy and have affairs and like just be this whatever they warned me that I was going to be? And I never would have known how normal that was, except that the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I'm talking to these women, these young women now that I'm coaching that are going through the exact same thing.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because messes for me, like when people come to me, I encourage messes because we've built a rapport and they feel safe enough.
Yeah.
If you don't feel safe enough, a mess is actually extremely risky.
Terrifying. Yes.
And
Totally.
not helpful, and it could actually re-traumatize you. So thank you for clarifying that. And like, there is an asterisk. In my world, there's an always, it depends, and there's no one size fits all. And there's one of my instructors was saying that every nervous system is different and everyone comes with its own theory. So I can't just box everyone in. This is how people respond. So every individual comes with a nervous system story, and there's a new theory that comes with that because they will be different than the next person.
Totally. Can you talk more about that? So, okay, this is very exciting for me to watch your journey, because I remember back in the day, what is it, 7, 8 years ago, talking to you with the things that were coming up for me, childhood sexual abuse and all of the craziness that comes with that mentally. And I remember asking, when I had been talking to you about it, asking you, have you heard of somatic experiencing? Because I had just started working with Sarah Baldwin, a somatic experiencing practitioner, and you ended up researching it and then taking the 3-year program, right?
Yeah.
3 years to get your somatic experiencing certification. And so now you are a somatic sex and relationship coach. Yes. And it's so exciting. So can you explain in your own words a little bit about what that is, somatic experiencing, and then how that has changed the way you work with people that are coming home to themselves and their own embodied essence?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
And it is so fun to think of, like, I found them because you mentioned it, and it felt my first training. I walked into and I felt at home. Like, my nervous system was like, I finally found my people.
Wow.
And it was so crazy to me. And like, I'm learning all this stuff. And I actually got a little frustrated because there was so much unlearning that I had to do, but it resonated with my body, like my nervous system. At the core of who I am, they were speaking my language.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I am now an assistant for somatic experiencing. I'm so excited.
Yes.
And so what it is helping people process their trauma or wounds from whenever that got trapped in our bodies. Because when we experience something socially and culturally, we've been conditioned to separate body and brain. And we white knuckle our way through life oftentimes and disregard our body, especially growing up in the purity culture or conservative. Our body is not to be trusted, all of these things. And so we've cut off part of ourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it is realigning our body and brain and helping our nervous system actually work the way it's supposed to. And
Mm-hmm.
the nervous system's only job is to keep us alive, is to protect us.
Yeah.
And so instead of avoiding it, instead of shooting it down, it's allowing ourselves to have emotions and not view them as bad. It's allowing
Yeah.
ourselves to notice, where am I holding whatever just came at me? If I'm having a visceral response,
A
like
trigger.
a trigger, like why am I having that trigger?
Yeah.
And if you are in a relationship that's safe enough for you to feel it, that's where the messes can come in.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's not like your body's communicating. If you walk into a room, you feel something and our body picks it up before our brain, but sometimes we disregard it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you can walk into a room and say, "Oh, I feel at ease," or
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, something's giving me the ick," right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's allowing that to be ever present.
Mm-hmm.
And so, not a nutshell, but that's part of what it is. And
Yeah.
when it comes to sex or sexuality or incorporating pleasure into your life, you can't separate your body from it. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you have no connection to your body, it's going to be very hard to actually experience sex in a way that brings pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes obligatory, which then reinforces the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? And or
Right.
um and so my goal is to create a safe enough environment to facilitate people's nervous systems and bodies to actually do the work that it never had time or space to do, because our body
Yeah.
needs time and space, and oftentimes an empathetic witness to hold space with them, to allow their nervous system to finish out the fight, flight, or freeze response that we never got to.
Yeah. Yes. You talked about how, like, you can't separate sexuality from humanity, and I was wondering if you actually can, to the detriment, though, of your own health.
Okay, yes, you sure can.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I know a lot of
Okay.
people. Yeah.
If okay, let's put it this way. Thank you. I love
Yeah.
that you're like bringing these things that I say and like I get to come back and circle.
Yeah.
Um, if you want to live a full, thriving life,
There we go.
you can't separate bits and pieces of who you are.
You won't want to.
You won't want to.
Yes.
You
Right.
can. Absolutely. You
Yeah.
get to, you can. There's like, I just don't want to acknowledge this part of me. Absolutely. You can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yet, if you are wanting to live a full life that actually incorporates all of who you are, to fully believe that you belong, you can't be hiding bits and pieces of you.
Yeah.
And it
Right.
may not be exposing it to everybody everywhere,
Yeah.
right? It's knowing that you have a container, a partner, a spouse, a friend that you get to be fully present, or even just with yourself. And
Yes.
then you go out into a work meeting. They don't need every part of you. Your nervous system just needs to know that you have access to it and you know when to show it and when not to.
Right.
But it's not ever bad.
Right.
Does that
Yes.
make sense? That
Absolutely. And it go what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just going to say, does that clarify it more?
Yes, it does. And it sounds a lot like the journey that a well-parented we'll just speak to women since we're talking about femininity in this episode. Obviously, men and women, but um for a well-parented little girl would have gone through,
Yeah.
like figuring out who she is authentically, when to express different parts of her, um, maybe putting away different parts of her, not out of shame, but like in response to different situations that she's in that match. And that is, I think, a journey that almost every woman that I know we could say did not have perfectly or did not have at all.
Yeah.
And so coming home to yourself looks like, for me, I always say, like, you can't get around inner child work. I don't know if you would agree,
Oh
but
yeah,
I feel like it's like when your nervous system's reacting. I heard somebody say the body is the inner child, and I'm like, yeah, that is a way to say that.
yeah,
Like, your body is the subconscious mind. Your body is reacting to the world based on what happened to you. And so when we're talking about being messy and reclaiming and recovering parts of ourselves, we are talking about letting the little girl in us finally go through the journey of becoming an embodied feminine adult,
yeah.
with all the
But
messiness,
don't
but with
forget about the teenage years that never got to happen.
oh, I didn't. I didn't. That was
Oh,
actually
okay.
something. Yeah. My mentor, I just had one of my mentors from my 20s and 30s, who walked with me through the messiest season of my life when I was just waking up to all of this stuff. And I had so much shame. And she would tell me, don't judge yourself for acting like the teenager that you never got to be. And I even have chills now saying it, because it's so true. If I never had guidance to become the woman that I was meant to be, and she's trying to come out, now, like, ha- yes, it's going to be messy.
Yeah.
And I don't mean, and what we're saying is not just, I'm not saying that you need to go on a destructive journey. It doesn't mean the kind of messes that destroy your
It's
life
a
and your
spring
marriage.
clean.
Yeah, it's looking at all of the beliefs, all of, maybe not all, but some of the memories that you experienced that were really painful, and getting the gold from those parts of you, healing the little girl that went through that pain, bringing her up to the present moment. Like, that is messy.
Yeah.
And I think without guidance like yours, we can tend to, and we see it all the time, women who do destroy their lives or go from relationship to relationship, or end up between, okay, I have no idea what to do, so I'm just going to adhere to the rules of whatever biblical womanhood ideals were
Yeah.
given to me, or I'm just going to say F that and I'm going to do whatever I freaking want, rebellion or hypersexuality or whatever.
Yeah.
And so my question for you would be, uh, what helps a woman discern what's authentic for her rather than what's performative or conditioned?
Well, great question. And a lot of times you'll get people that have no idea what does it feel like to be in my body.
Yes.
And I
Mm-hmm.
can't ask someone to, well, what does that feel like in your body? Where do you notice that if that's not anywhere on their grid?
Yeah.
Right. And so understanding where they're at, like, what do you want? And recognizing that you could want something today that in 2 weeks you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then asking yourself, okay, what is my long-term goal? I want to live without regrets. I want to be able to be a fully embodied woman. And what does that look like? So write that down, okay? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a goal list there. And so today I'm going to wake up and what do I feel like doing? Right? And checking with where I am if they are still menstruating, check in where they are in their cycle because
Yeah.
there are times that um, like you're supposed to go to the gym. It'll always make you feel better. And in reality, no, it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took my children to the gym when it was raining and I was like, oh yeah, I wish I hadn't gone because it didn't make me feel any better.
Like, I went because I was supposed to, but
Yeah.
my
Right.
body didn't want that
But
today.
3 days later, I went and I was like, oh yeah, I feel like $1,000,000. Right.
Yeah.
But we white knuckle our way through
Yeah. What we're
life,
supposed to do.
doing what
Yeah.
is supposed to. And so if you could ask yourself, do I want to go to the gym today? And
Mm-hmm.
then if you say no, ask yourself, why?
Yeah.
Am I feeling lazy? Am I tired? Or if I want to go to the gym, why? Is it because I'm going to feel guilty because I ate something and so now I have to punish myself for eating something, right?
Mm.
And if I'm doing it out of punishment, then maybe I shouldn't go,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing it because, oh, I love the rush of the endorphins and, oh, I'm actually in my luteal phase, of course I want to go. I've got some extra energy to burn. Then
Yeah.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like just being able to ask yourself the whys. And that's where I would
Bringing
start.
curiosity in.
Bringing
Yes.
curiosity. And then ask the next why, right?
Yeah.
Because we weren't taught to be curious. Curiosity was unsafe, right?
Yes.
You can't
Oh, yes.
question
Right.
authority. It is respectful or honor them. And no, it's the way we were often taught was blind following, and that's
Yeah.
not honoring or respectful. That's
Right.
actually disrespectful and not honoring at all. And
Yeah.
so actually checking in, why am I doing this? Am I
Mhm.
doing it because there's a expectation put on me, because I feel guilty, because there's shame? And just acknowledging that before you can ever get into your body, you actually need to be able to identify what's going on,
Mhm.
because you can't fix something if you're trying to fix the wrong thing.
Yeah,
You
totally.
can't heal something. I can't heal a broken leg if I'm bandaging my shoulder,
Yeah. Mhm.
right?
Totally.
And so starting with just those things.
Yeah.
And the top 3, 4 things that I'll have a client do if they don't know how to be aware of their body, I say, okay, when was the last time you were thirsty and didn't get a drink, needed to go to the bathroom and
That's
didn't
right.
go, you were
Mhm.
hungry and you didn't eat, or you were tired and didn't take a nap?
Yes, that's somebody that would be a sign of somebody who's not in their body.
Mhm. But it's also a badge of honor for us. How long can I go till I use the bathroom? Right?
Yeah.
So we become martyrs to ourselves. And
Mhm.
every time we don't go to the
So
bathroom,
true.
we don't eat, we don't drink, we betray ourselves a little bit more,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so a lot of times people are like, oh, good, you don't feel hunger. But that's actually a sign that something's not working right.
Mhm.
Like for years, I would joke that, oh, yeah, I just don't get hungry. Like I
Mhm.
didn't register hunger.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great.
Disconnected from the
Yeah.
cues that your body was sending you.
But every time um, I chose not to eat, I was betraying myself a little longer. And my body
Mm.
decided it wasn't safe to be hungry because
Mhm.
I'd ignore it.
Mhm.
I abandoned that little whatever in me, right?
Totally.
And so
Totally.
it took me setting a timer for every 2.5 hours to ensure that
Yeah.
I eat.
Mhm.
And now I feel hungry and I can wake up and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm starving.
Yeah.
And
Recovering those cues. Yeah,
it and
totally.
allowing my body to actually be. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of embodying femininity, is
Yeah.
allowing my body to be true to itself.
I think yes, so well said, and I think that, to add a couple of things to that, I remember the basics of coming back home to my body did look like it was like from scratch, like, oh, when like paying attention to when I do have to go to the bathroom, when I am
Mhm.
hungry, when I am thirsty, like those very, very basic clues, when I
Very
am
basic.
tired. And also, recovering desire for me and pleasure for me was like, that's like somebody's like, hey, watch this horror movie. Like it felt scary to me, even the word pleasure and desire. And I know that you hear that all the time
Oh yeah.
because I was raised in an incredibly sheltered, religious upbringing.
Mm.
Nothing like that was ever talked about. And I remember having to go, like, what? Like, if I'm shopping at a mall and I see something cute, like, I remember having to be so tedious, like, how do I know that I think it's cute? Like,
Mhm.
what's happening in my body that I like this sweater? Like,
Yeah.
that's what desire is. That's what
Yeah.
pleasure is. It's not like this. It doesn't equate to the things that I thought it would equate to.
Mhm.
Deep, dark, erotic. Like,
Yeah. No, it
that's
is. I
not that there's
really
not
like
a
this glass of wine because
yes.
whatever.
Right, exactly. And like being like, I remember being at an ice cream shop and being like, do I want what flavor do I want? Do I want this pistachio? No. How do I know I don't want this
Mhm.
flavor? Like I was like, how
Yeah.
do I want this chocolate flavor? I desire to have this chocolate flavor. Like it is very tedious work, but it's like compound interest.
Yeah.
Like it builds on itself big time when you are really consistent with like, what do I authentically prefer? What are my preferences?
Yeah. And you
And
get to, and you're not high maintenance. And if
no,
it is, what's
yeah.
the matter with being high maintenance?
Totally. I watch people like my sister-in-law's like this. She just knows what she wants every minute of the day. She's like, ew, I don't want that. And I'm like, wow,
Oh,
like what would that be like? She's like, no, let's go to this restaurant. And I, for Christian women, I think, who acquiesce to what other people want, it's like, can be a little bit like, well, you can't just like
Mm.
say that. And I have like learned from her and from other women that know what they want. And it's like, not a problem. And if somebody has a problem with it, that's like on them. It's like
Yeah.
weird.
And then, okay, let's have a conversation.
Totally. If you're like, if somebody feels like you're like, encroaching on their boundaries, like, well, let's talk about that. But yes, it's like not nearly as much of a problem at all. It's actually like a very fun discovery of like your preference blueprint. The other thing that I would add too, this is something that I have offered as a like a email freebie, is inspiration marrying. So like looking at who inspires you and why. So you're a great example. Like you would inspire me and my friends, and we'd be like whenever you're noticing, you're saying like, wouldn't that be nice? That's a great trailhead
Yeah.
for you to recognize, like, what is it about this person that inspires me? How could I practice or move towards trying that a little bit or embodying that? Or like, what specifically is it about the way that that person is that I like, and listing that out, because what you're listing is a picture of who you are authentically. Maybe not in a literal sense, like I don't want to be Rebekah, but like
Right.
what are some of the things that are being mirrored back to me that I'm noticing because I'm inspired by her? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is it kind of like you're attracted to what's inside and whether or not you have access to it yourself currently, but it's going to be drawn out? Or you're like, wow, they have something that I've never allowed myself to think about.
Both. So in so there's like inspiration, attraction, and jealousy. And inspiration is like, it feels like, ooh, I want that. Like that looks really fun. And there's like there's a little bit more of a freedom to inspiration. Like you get to dream about what that would be like. Your nervous system feels a little bit safer to pretend or to imagine what that would be like to have that. Jealousy is interesting because it's this feeling of, I want what they have, but I can't have it for some reason.
Mm.
Or I want what they have, but they already have it, so I can't have it. So it's like inspiration plus scarcity.
Yeah.
Or inspiration plus unsafety. And so what I'll have people do is I'll have people write out 5 or 6 people that inspire them, and then specifically why exactly. And it's always like, some people will write the same person, but the reasons are completely different based on who my client is. Yeah. So it, all of the things that inspire them about like whatever, like Joanna Gaines or like Taylor Swift or whatever. Like you're just writing out like the way that they dress, or how funny they are, or like how free they are, or the fact that they travel, or the way they design their home, or the relationship they have with their husband. And when you can start to decode why each person inspires you, you really get this picture of like the vision that you might want to start moving towards for your own life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, what I want to talk about, like your understanding of helping people move through the resistance that comes up when they begin to move towards, let's say, their own feminine expression, or even like their own moving towards their own sexuality. Like what role does the nervous system play in keeping you from moving towards that? And what are some of the ways that you help people through those blocks?
So I would say, like, I have to make a list. What type of woman, what type of couple, what type of sex life do you actually want to have? Right? Because if you don't know what you want, it's very hard to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But I
Mm-hmm.
also have the asterisk of saying, hey, this gets to change because right now, this is what you can imagine. And it gets to be whatever you want, and you're not stuck.
Got it. Totally. Yeah. Like this is a movable, shape
Yeah.
shifting. Like the
We
more
are
you
very
grow, the
fluid.
more we'll clarify.
Yeah.
Yes. Got it.
We live in the gray. I don't do black and white, right or wrong, good or bad. I
Yeah.
live in the gray. And so you working with me means you're willing enough to work in the gray. And it may be dark gray and almost white, beige for you for
Pretty
now.
darn close. Yeah.
But the goal is to see how comfortable you can get in your process with slightly less black or slightly
Mhm.
less white, right?
Mhm.
Because it's allowing your nervous system to reacclimate to something that has always been unsafe, and
Mhm.
now you're just dipping your toes in the water.
Mhm.
So if they if I have clients that disassociate during sex, right? Which is common. I have the laundry list of things, or there's been trauma or whatever, and they
Mhm.
disassociate. I was like, great, your nervous system is protecting you.
Yeah,
Yet,
brilliant response, yeah, for what your
yet,
nervous system thinks is happening.
yes. Yeah, what if we just said disassociate a little bit less? And they're like,
1%.
well, how do I do that? I was like, okay,
Mhm.
if you notice it happening, just pull yourself back in and start rubbing your fingers together or scratch your partner's back. Do something physical to actually
Mm.
notice.
Which reminds your body that you are here in
I'm
the
here.
present moment, not back
Yeah,
in the past.
right. And so then,
Yeah.
okay, then I'm here. And then again, I'm gonna like float up here. See if I can float just a slightly less and still be halfway. Right.
Yeah,
And this is
right.
over time. This isn't a one visit
Yeah,
thing.
right.
It is
Right.
a marathon, not a sprint,
Yeah.
because you've had years of reinforcing that
Yes.
it's your nervous system believes it's not safe because it didn't have the groundwork to create the safety before the engagements happened,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it is recreating a new foundation. And hopefully, you've married or have partnered with someone that has time and space and grace for your journey and their own. Because
Mhm.
anytime you're going through something, your partner does also.
Mhm.
And having grace for yourself and for them, because oftentimes they didn't ask for the shift in the dynamic,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And it impacts them.
Yeah.
But as we heal and those wounds become old memories and just part of our past, but not part of our present, it
Mhm.
creates space for them to actually do theirs, to do their
Mhm.
work. My
Mhm.
freedom creates space for others to do theirs
Mhm.
because I no longer get triggered by this thing.
Yeah.
That, like if I would trigger my husband, then he would trigger me, and then we just do this thing and we'd never deal with this. But
Yeah.
if I can do my work, I don't have to respond in this way. And the thing that he got triggered by, he actually has capacity
Mhm.
or space, let's say
Yeah.
space, to actually deal with his stuff,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
vice versa. Him doing his work creates space for me to be able to do mine. And then you
Mhm.
have grace for the both and, because it's not a competition. We're on
Mhm.
the same team. And once we realize that, it's a lot easier to engage and lowers the stakes around sex and sexuality.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think the same principle applies to maybe single women or maybe women that their focus right now is like becoming expressing more of a healthy
Mhm.
femininity, which is what I hear a lot of,
Yeah,
women and clients that I work with, where it's like, get the vision for what exactly it is that you're wanting to integrate, that you're wanting to embody in your life. So like pay attention to some of the women around you that strike you as like healthy and embodied, and maybe mirroring back to you like the style or whatever
yeah,
the expression. And then would you say moving towards that, like what's 1%, what's one tiny step towards that,
yeah.
and then showing your body that you're here in the present as you
Mhm.
make that step.
Yeah. And that's a great way, because if they have no idea what they want, they just know they don't want what they have,
Super common.
right?
Totally. Yeah.
So if I see someone and then I was like, "Oh, I love the way they present themselves in a room." Okay, how do they present? How do I notice? Right? And then
Yeah.
what if I tried that? What would that
Yeah.
feel like? Like just in my mind, before I actually do it,
Mhm.
what would it look like for me to present myself in a room that way?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And allowing that to sit for a second
Yeah.
and just notice,
Mhm.
and then try it
Yeah.
in a semi low stakes spot. And then you're like, okay, yeah, that felt like me. Or you're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, nope, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And both are just as important.
Information.
It's all information gathering.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so being
totally.
able to say, okay, I love this type of outfit. Let's try it.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
you buy it, you wear it, and you're like, okay, yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, totally.
I love doing that.
Yeah, I know you do. That's the journey. Yes. I've tried on lots of your clothes before. I know you do. Um, so last thing, I would love to know, let's say you have a oh no, nope, no, two questions. This is
Okay.
the one question I would love for you to explain really quickly your take on modesty because
Mm,
you talked to me about what you tell your daughters, and I just think all of my listeners need to hear this take. Not that you need to agree with it or implement it, but I think you need to know that it exists and that it's a beautiful, I think a very beautiful way to see it. Can you explain how you talk to your daughters about like what they want to wear and the whole modesty discussion?
absolutely. And funny that you bring this up because this has been the theme of the day with my morning clients is modesty.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is fresh.
Yes, right.
Um, so we have two daughters and a son, and modesty is one of my soapboxes because I believe modesty is very cultural. You can go to India and you can have
Yes.
cleavage and a midriff showing, and you are modest, but if you show your ankle, it's a scandal,
Right,
right?
right.
Like I
Oh my
spoke in
gosh, it's
India
maddening.
and I had my stunning sari on, and I had to walk upstairs. And saris are long to the ground, so I
Right.
pull the skirt part up, and like you hear this gasp, and I like
Stop.
drop the skirt quick as I'm walking up the stairs. And granted, this was years ago. Yet it was so funny because
Sure.
I'm
Such a
going
great
home
point.
and I'm not allowed to show any cleavage or my midriff again, right? But I'm modest here. There are places in the Philippines, in the mountains, where women are topless, and that is modest, right?
Mhm.
And so we as
Or
humans,
Brazil.
or Brazil,
My
yeah,
friends are from Brazil that are
oh,
like the thong
yeah,
bikinis
yeah,
walking
and
through the
I
grocery store.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. I love skin.
Yeah.
And so my stance on modesty is I am dressing for me. And if my intention is to
So
accentuate
good.
or to kind of showcase, like you would at a museum, a piece of art, because if we grew up purity culture in the church, God created our bodies, then it's perfect. It is good. It's beautiful. And
Right.
so if I decide to wear a burlap bag, I am saying he was wrong. And I'm going to take
Mm.
the God seat and say, I know better than he does ultimately. And so my stance with our children is you wear what you wear because you feel comfortable and confident. We will keep this a running conversation because we still
Sure.
live in the society and culture that we live in, and not
Mhm.
everyone believes the way I do.
Mhm.
But if you are wearing it because you think it just fits your body best, you rock it,
Yeah.
and we'll just keep having the conversation. And if at some point you're doing it to get someone's attention and to do all these things because you're feeling insecure, then we have another conversation.
Yeah.
But my girls have been dress coded, and I don't mind
Yeah.
because they chose, and none of it's scantily clad stuff.
Right.
It's like
Totally. Yeah.
I don't mind a midriff.
Yeah.
I actually think it's cute, and on my girls it looks good.
Yeah.
And so that's how we handle it. And it is not their job to protect boys.
Yeah.
And when someone says your
Amen.
shoulders are distracting me, I said, then you've got to learn to manage that distraction because
Yes.
it's not going to benefit you in the
Yes.
future. Right.
Absolutely.
And so in the purity culture, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent.
Go for it, please.
So if it is our job to be modest as women, we say boys will be boys. We've just given them an out. They
Mhm.
don't have to be responsible for their thoughts and actions because I'm supposed to control them. Ultimately, is what
Mhm.
you're saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so then we get married and naked in a room with this animal because he can't control himself
Right.
around something that I'm not allowed to feel arousal or
Yeah.
desire, and now there's these raging hormones, and my head says yes, my body says no, and so we just reinforced a whole bunch of trauma because my body is shameful and bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so my girls, it was really cute. One time I was out of town, and so I have this friend taking my oldest daughter shopping for a semi dress. Okay. And she tries it on, and my friend was like, what would your dad say? And my daughter looks at her and she's like, I don't dress for my dad. Like, just this
Wow.
confidence that I get to dress for me.
Wow.
And my friend was just like, it just
I
made,
want to go to there. I want to be
yeah.
that way.
And so just being able to hold space for that is huge. And so
Yeah.
um, modesty is, I believe, an internal motivation. And
Yeah.
so I let my girls wear bikinis to the beach. I let
Mm-hmm.
them wear what they want, and we have conversations with our son because I'm not willing for him to grow up with the same thought process that boys will be
Yeah.
boys.
Right.
He
Totally.
doesn't get to.
Yeah.
That is not
Right.
an option.
Yeah. Yeah, and you talked about like I think what you told me originally too is like if my daughters are dressing to hide themselves,
Yeah.
we need to talk about that. There is an
Yeah.
issue there. And if
It's the
my
flip
daughters are
side.
dressing to get
Attention.
attention to validate them, that is also a conversation we need to have. There are deeper issues
Yes.
there. Like, and I just that blew my mind. Like, where was this
Yeah.
growing up? This is absolutely exactly right.
So it's a flip side of the same coin, and
Right.
it's the pendulum swing.
Yes.
So my goal is to hold as much space in that gray area for them so
Yes.
that they know that, okay, I get to.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and we get to discover and figure things out. And yeah, if we're ashamed of our bodies, it's just as painful and harmful as if we're trying to flaunt it.
Yes, right. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so my last question finally now is I would love for you to maybe even just imagine that you have either like a family member or a client who is struggling with so much shame. Shame is a nervous system state, but it's that experience of a disconnection from love, the internalization of what happened to you. And I just wonder what would you say to somebody who is struggling with a lot of shame around their own femininity, moving like they feel so much shame around their sexuality, and they just don't know how to move forward, but they're just so stuck in that shame. Like, what would be your encouragement to them?
Yeah, so the first thought that came to mind is if they're physically in person, I would just probably go sit next to them and just say, I am so sorry.
Mm,
Like just holding space, like, okay, let's sit in that shame, and because it is sad, because it came from somewhere.
that's right.
And so being able to just sit and say,
Right.
I am really sorry
Yeah.
that that has been so prevalent for all of these years.
Yeah.
What can I do to support you? What
Mhm.
do you need? Because they probably never had anyone say, what do you need to
Yeah.
process this? Because it's not something they could talk about. And they
Yeah.
probably don't know what they need yet,
Yeah.
but just having like that empathetic witness of saying, I'm here. What do you need?
Yeah. Beautiful.
And that would
Yes.
get there first, and then we'd have to keep working and unpack it.
Totally. I know.
But
Yeah.
the very initial is just being that space that they get to unload it, and they don't have to hold it for that 50 minutes. For those 50 minutes,
Mhm. Right.
they
I'll be
can
with it.
I'm
I'll be
here
in it
with
with you.
you.
Totally. Yeah, which does break shame because if shame is the perceived disconnection from love, then you're bringing love into that place just with your presence. All my somatic practitioner friends are the ones that talk about things in like the smallest steps
Mhm.
ever. It's
Yeah.
such a good reminder for me because it has been small steps that have led me to this place that I'm at now. And I tend to be so like, there's so much hope. It's going to be great. Like you're going to be there. We're going to go, but it's such a good reminder of like, it is the small moments of presence that heal with yourself and with other people. Um, such a beautiful discussion. I'm already like, okay, you have to come back, obviously.
Okay.
Where can people find you?
I'm on social media, Instagram, RJL Coaching. And I have a website, rjlcoaching.com. And I will soon have a podcast. And that
You will. And if you see her around Reading, you're going to know her from her fabulous outfits and fashion. Thank you so much, my friend. It was so good to have you. And
thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you next week.